So tell me about some communication issues that you run into with your clients.
So communication issues. You have ones that just kind of go with the flow, which in one way seems nice, but then in another way I'm like, I encourage you to ask questions. Like, I want to make sure you understand. And a lot of them, and I don't know if I really consider a communication issue more than they just go with the flow, and which is, again, it's nice, but they trust me as their agent to ensure.
So they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Right, and which is always great, right? I mean, as far as they trust me, but then it always kind of makes me a little nervous because I'm like, I want to make sure that you understand everything and that you know what's going on in that sense. But communication, let's see. I think there's a lot of communication issues when it comes to like understanding the difference between the appraiser and the home inspector, which I think I've mentioned that before, but a lot of people don't understand that. And so I tell them the appraisal is for the bank. They're loaning you that money. They have to ensure that value is there with the purchase price you've agreed to, and the home inspector is for your protection. And I tell people, I'm never going to tell you not to have a home inspection. I'm always going to encourage you to do so. So, and I think that communication can be an issue with text messaging.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know you were talking about earlier how, you see certain things and they're common. And I know that communication can become an issue because we interpret things differently, right, as people. And so it's our job to make sure that they're understanding. And one of the things that I'll do sometimes is follow up with a statement to clarify what they said to make sure that they understand, whether that's an agent, a water company, when we call a client, right? Because we want to make sure that they understand, and that we're saying the same thing. There have been times where, when you're doing a repair request, and I had a scenario where I said, all the plumbing on this is being fixed and everything, and gosh, this has been like, I don't even know how many years ago, 5-7 years ago, and they said, yeah, it's on the addendum for the repair request, and it's being fixed, and I'm like, oh, okay, great. Well, it didn't get fixed. So there was a communication error there. I didn't go back and check, and I paid the $150. Well, why did I pay the $150? Well, it doesn't matter if there was a communication issue between the two agents. The bottom line is it has to be fixed. My buyer thought it was, and it wasn't. So
you felt responsible.
Always, right? Always going to fix that. So yeah, I mean, it just happens. And so you have to get everything in writing. And that's the biggest side with me is you have to communicate, but I communicate with the agent on behalf of my client, my buyer or seller. And anything that we agree to, not we as in me and the agent, because we're not allowed to agree. I do what my client asks. I don't do what Anna wants.
Sure.
Because what my client wants is not necessarily what Anna wants. And so anything that the buyer and the seller agree to, you have to get it in writing. Like, there's just no other way. Because if you don't, there's this room for error and miscommunication. And that's when deals fall apart, and that's when checks are written to fix them because of a miscommunication. Now, all that has to be disclosed, right? I mean, you can't just go around just paying for stuff. You have to disclose when you have to disclose when things are paid for like that during a real estate transaction.
Sure.
So, I keep saying So that part's the biggest thing with communication on my side as the real estate agent is ensuring that my clients are protected and that it's in writing.
Yeah. It's like what's that old game we used to play when we were kids?
Telephone?
Yeah, telephone, where you get the line of people and you whisper something in the ear and see how the message changes.
So, you know what? That's actually really funny because that relates perfectly as to what texting is.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I still find myself so many times saying, I need to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I need to have a conversation to understand.
Because there are layers of communication, right? And people who study this, I mean, up to 70, 80%, I think it is, of what gets communicated between two people is nonverbal. It's things like body language.
That's
and
funny,
eye contact, and all the things that you're definitely not going to get in a text message or reading an inspection report comment.
So 90%?
Close to it in some cases.
Wow, that's impressive.
So
Okay.
text message and written word is one layer. If we go to a phone conversation, that's a little bit better, right? Because now I can hear your voice, I can hear your tone, and I can hear the words, right? And you can word things, smoother. But then in person is even better, right? Because then I get all this body language and stuff, and you can tell, do I seem casual and relaxed, or am I like, we really need to discuss this issue. This is something it's more urgent, and like there's a lot that gets communicated and a lot that gets lost. So it's important in a real estate transaction.
Oh, so
to
important.
cut down on those layers and get as close as you can to the source of the information that you need to make a good decision, right?
That's really that's really interesting. So, and I know there are times where, in negotiations, the buyer or seller will come back with something that's just kind of like, you're like, I don't know.
Where's that coming from?
You still have to present that. And I always like to call the agent. And I'm like, look, I just want you to know where they're coming from. They're not trying to be rude. They're not trying to insult them. They're, this is where they are and this is why. And I think being able to have those conversations so that it's not like let's just be so, I don't know, just back and forth the numbers. But let's add some realism there. This is where their intention is behind that response to your offer or whatever that is, so that they understand. And that's a big thing too, because sometimes I feel like that there can be a breakdown between two agents. Might get in trouble for saying that, but there can be where we're trying to communicate, and so I find myself that when you got to try to keep the peace for everyone.
Sure.
And that can be a challenge sometimes because, again, personalities and everyone has differences of opinions. And when you have a buyer and a seller where the price difference is $50,000 to $100,000 in value, but then, it can be difficult because if the seller believes that that's what the value is, I just don't know, because like with my side, it's like, well, these are the comp side pool. These are the sales. I can't get it to that value. I need to know where you got that value at, because
I raised my kids here. So I mean, and I'm not making light of that. It's like there's market value, but then there's like personal sentimental value.
This is so true.
And that really does play into a person's perception, or a seller.
Yes.
Right. And I'm not saying it's.
Well,
I get it.
Right. Yes, and I understand too. And selling my own property and my sweat and equity in it. I mean, it can be one of those things where you're just like, no.
Yeah.
And I get that, but that part can make it hard too. And that's the tricky side of being an agent and trying to kindly explain to your clients, like, hey, these are the sales. This is what's sold. I can't get it to the value that you want. I don't know how it's going to appraise for that. But just really having those conversations and communicating about things is really the most important thing, and being able to explain to your client